Hi everyone, how are you all? Did you all have nice weekends, I hope? And I hope that you also managed to find a little bit of sunshine. Thank you so much for joining us again for another One More Chapter book club. I'm so excited for our discussion today as I'm going to be joined by Abigail Mann, author of The Lonely Fajita. The Lonely Fajita is Abby's debut and published just last Friday, but it was also the runner-up for the Comedy Women in Print Prize last year, which is amazing. So we're so happy that it's out in the world now, and you can all go and get it. I've got a proof here, so you can see it here, which is really cool. But it's available in ebook right now. So I think one key way to describe this book is that it's just a total balm for everything that's going on in the world right now. It is hilarious, but also so touching and heartwarming with the most fantastic characters. So I think that's enough for me to start off with. And I shall now bring in Abby.
Hello.
Hi, first of all, Abby, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm fueled on my coffee for the day, so yeah, I'm feeling bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, so to speak.
Yeah, and how are you feeling after publication day only last Thursday? How's that, your first ever publication day as well? Like, how did that feel?
It was so nice. It's strange because it's obviously I was working on the book, well, in lots of different locations, but it's so solitary and you do it all by yourself and you have these little glimpses into it being in the outside world. But on Thursday, it felt like a nice closure, I suppose, that there was technically nothing more I could have done to the book at that point. It was out of my hands, and it did kind of feel like the dropping them off first day at school sort of sort of feeling.
Yeah, exactly. And just something, you've been working on for such a long time, and that it's just finally out there in the world. And because, of course, you kind of, it's, I guess, has the Lonely Fajita been quite a long journey for you in a certain sense, because obviously it was, I guess, finished when you submitted it for the Comedy Women in Print Prize, right?
It was very close to being finished. So I used the Comedy Women in Print Prize as a deadline to finish my first draft. And then I thought, well, at least I've gotten, I think I was 80-ish% of the way there when I did that. And then when it got longlisted, I had to rush through the manuscript and try and get it up to scratch as much as possible. But yes, it was sort of finished at that point. But I suppose up until this point, it's been about 18 months, 2 years, with a couple of failed attempts before that. So it seems like it has been a long time. It was nice to come to a sort of an end point, but obviously it's never quite an end point.
Yeah, we've got lots more coming up. That's really great. And yeah, so I was really interested to hear a bit more about the Comedy Women in Print Prize, and sort of how, like, a bit about that process, and sort of how did you first hear about entering? What made you decide to do that kind of thing?
I know the exact time and date that I found out about the Comedy Women in Print Prize because I took a screenshot of it on my phone because I saw it on Twitter, and I was scrolling through, and I had very recently, I think 6 weeks or so, I had switched from writing a historical novel to something that was more contemporary and humorous, and that came through. I was just scrolling on Twitter, probably procrastinating, and I found that and screenshotted it and thought I'd just come back to it later, and found it when I was going through my camera roll, and thought, that seems like too accurate a point to aim for. That I need to make this the part of my personal sort of set of deadlines, and that's how I sort of came across it. I think it was Helen Lederer holding up a stack of books or something like that on Twitter. So that's how I first found out about that, and it's really showcasing two parts of the prize, and an unpublished part, which obviously is the one that I submitted my manuscript in for, and then a published part of the prize, which I think is really nice because it created this little community of sort of long-listed authors, some of which were years and years into a career, and then others who were just starting out. And it very much felt like everyone was raising each other up and trying to signal boost everyone else. And so it's been a really nice way to sort of come into the publishing world, I suppose, having that group of people around.
Yeah, definitely. It just seems like such a wonderful community to then have and then be a part of. And then it kind of after that, basically, then did you get an agent, and then that's how you found us in the end?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had a list of agents I wanted to target, and I was just waiting for the right time to send out a submission pack. And luckily, for the prize, I had to write a synopsis for the novel anyway. So I kind of had done the preparation. I was just hovering over the send button, and then when I was shortlisted for the prize, an agent I got an email from an agent asking if I wanted to send the manuscript into them. So I thought, right, well, now's the time. I'm going to send off my first round of submissions, and then that's how I found Hayley Steve, who was my agent, and then that's how I came to you guys.
We're very lucky. We're very lucky. So first of all, one of my questions that I'm going to ask you, but everyone watching, please do ask us lots of questions so we can answer them as well. But my first question, or first proper book-related question for Abby is, can you tell us a bit about your inspiration for the book? It's such a brilliant idea.
So the inspiration, I have my own copy here.
Yes,
the inspiration, it's so nice to be able to tap it and smell it, and not in a weird way, obviously. New pages.
No, you always want to smell a book. It's just calming, isn't it?
Yeah. Inspiration behind books. So when I finished university, I moved to London with my partner, and I was trying to find an industry to go into. I wasn't really sure what to do with my degree, and this was before I started thinking about writing properly. So I took up a few internships, and we moved into a flat in sort of South London, and it's a very sort of experience in that so many people live in places in London for very short periods of time, and you don't really ever feel like you can immerse yourself in the community that you're around, and it seems very fast-paced and driven, and nothing seems hugely meaningful in terms of connections with people outside of your own household. And so I was thinking about that as an issue that specifically sort of younger people were facing, but then also nowadays when we've got so many connections with people via technology and apps and messaging, how is it that we have so many options to connect with people and yet still feel like we're not really connecting in a way that's meaningful? And if you don't have access to that as an older person, how does that impact you? So I wanted to sort of put these two people into a scenario where they were forced to interact and create their own version of a community in a way that they were perhaps a little stubborn about doing before, and looking for reasons why it wasn't going to work. So this was a way to sort of force that change onto somebody, and the influence of those internships that I was doing. I couldn't afford to do them for very long because a lot of them don't actually pay you. Those environments fed a lot into Alyssa's workplace, and a lot of the things that happened in those places, Tilda, my lovely editor, said that's actually too strange to put into a book because people won't believe it happened.
Which is that's crazy. Actually, that'll lead me on to my question later, which is about real, what's based on real life or not. But so yeah, it seems like that sort of stuff, obviously, that's quite based on real life, your real experiences there.
Yeah, definitely. There was a few interesting colleagues and bosses in particular that I had that fed into the characters.
Exactly. But I think what you were saying before about bringing that sort of element of community, or how I guess we're missing that a lot, I think is really what the Lonely Fajita does it does explore, and how we can bring those, you know, sort of disparate elements of different communities together, which I think is really important right now. And it's just that, you know, we're seeing in a lot of all your brilliant reviews, people saying that, oh, it's just, you know, it's just so perfect, you know, for right now, where you can see these people from, you know, quite lonely people at the start, definitely Alyssa and Annie, and then they find one another and, you know, come together for their own community, which I just think is brilliant. It's just such a lovely story.
Thank you.
that kind of leads me on to my next question, which it's still obviously to do with the book, but it is that Lonely Fajita is the most epic title. How did you come up with it? Because I think it just summarizes everything. But you're like, how does the Lonely Fajita, how does that sort of, all those words go together? And then it does take up the book, doesn't it?
I think so. It was there's a number of sort of connections I have to sort of go back on. So the title itself comes from a line in the book, which comes from a concept that runs through the book, which comes from a reflection that I had. So the idea of sort of the Lonely Fajita is one of you wanting to do something to cheer yourself up, but because of it being the very nature of it being communal, doing it by yourself just accentuates the fact that you feel quite alone. So it stems back from a time when I was living in our flat in Sheffield on my own, because my partner had gone back down to London to work. And I wanted to do something to cheer myself up, so cook your favourite food. So I got a fajita kit, made some fajitas, got it all different bowls, guacamole, salsa, sour cream, cheese, put it out on the table, sat down to construct it, and just was like, oh, this is so lonely, just doing this by myself, and we need someone else to do this with. And so that turned into a line early on in the book that Alyssa says to her friend that she doesn't want to construct fajitas on her own because it's too lonely. So I didn't. I thought it would get changed at some point. I needed a title to submit into the competition. My brother came up with the title, so I've got to give him credit for it. And he said, just put it in anyway. At least we thought, well, at least if it might stop someone scrolling for, you know,
definitely.
3 seconds.
Yeah, you just think, you're like, what is this? But also sounds so brilliant.
Yes, that's what the idea was, that okay, well, at least if it gets changed, it might catch someone's attention for a little bit. But then it just seemed to stick every stage that we thought it might change, it stuck. And I think even up until like last week, I was like, well, it's going to change the title, but no, it seems to have gone down well. And the cover design is what I think works really well.
Yeah, I think that let's take a second to appreciate the cover design. I think that you can. I'm trying hard with my camera. Like, where am I doing? You can just see the, you know, brilliant Alyssa right here. It's just, she's just perfect. And also, once we get out on the spine, she's just all there.
And she's tucked up next to friends on the shelf. So
yeah, exactly. She's always surrounded by people. No, I love it. Oh, Cheryl says here, love the title and the cover. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
We do too. Yes, hello to everyone again out there. Please please do ask us questions if you're just joining now. We would love to hear them. I'm going to move on to my next question for Abby now, which is this one. I love bringing it up on the screen.
It's very cool.
But I might as well use the tools, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There are so many hilarious moments and situations in The Lonely Fajita that feel so real. Did you base some of these on real life characters and situations? Which we kind of touched on a bit earlier. But...
Yeah, there are two sort of main things, I suppose. There's the first is Annie's character is based on a sort of a combination of my nans and that sort of the the forthright sort of northern spirit of like older women who can look after themselves. When I lived it up in Yorkshire, so I sort of combined all of those together. We call her Big Nan because she's big. I had a big nan and a little nan because of height difference. Big Nan is very much independent, looks after herself. She's 81 this week and still cycles around. We've tried to keep her inside. It's not working. But
I'm going out there living my own life. Thank you.
I know. Beyond locking her in, I'm not sure what we can do. She once was in a supermarket and was followed out of the supermarket and home, and she was sort of going down an alley between some blocks of flats, hid round a corner where a guy was on a bike and went to grab her bag and whacked him so hard with a 2-pinter of milk it exploded.
Oh my God.
So she's very much like, doesn't feel like she needs looking after. So there was that sort of spirit I wanted to include in Annie's character. But also actually there's a sense of stubbornness, I think, that comes in with it, that I think a lot of people experience with older relatives who feel like it's too late in the day to change a lifestyle in a significant way. But that's something that I wanted to sort of explore with Annie's character. And then there are some anecdotes from when I was working in internships when I was younger and just sort of fresh out of university. One in particular that influenced Mitchell's character quite a lot, who is Alyssa's boss. Alyssa works in a app startup, and a lot of the time when I was working in that industry, the workplace is quite unusual. There's sort of like napping pods and table football tables and
like fake grass everywhere, or
fake grass. I don't understand why.
Inside, why?
Just go outside.
Yeah. They never want me to leave. That's the thing.
No, this is the thing. It's very much a sort of an attitude of like work hard, play hard, and the group of people that were often quite young. I was interviewed by somebody who had a workforce of almost like 15 people, and yet he was the youngest as the CEO. He was not even 21, and it's a very interesting environment. So one boss I had at one of these internships had Mitchell's way of his emotions didn't necessarily match his facial expressions, so he's very hard to read whether he was angry at you or happy with you, because often he'd look happy but actually he was fuming. And the penny would drop at certain times. Someone said boys club environment. Very much so, very much so. And sort of strange power plays in the workplace, like a coder who had not completed this particular piece of work on time and it was causing a delay on a website, and he just was really angry and shouting, and then just switched mood almost within like a split second, and told my colleague that he thought he needed a haircut, and then just cut a bit of his hair off. Just
oh my gosh.
in front of everyone, like a really weird sort of like alpha male power flex, and no one knew what to say. It was so bizarre. And just sort of sprinkled it on the table and then said, "That's better." And then he walked off. And we were just stunned, just didn't know what to do. But it was that kind of thing that actually that was one of the examples that I mentioned earlier, that it was too much to put into a book. Because people would be like, that wouldn't happen in a workplace. It was too much. So I toned down those sorts of elements of Mitchell.
Basically you toned down Mitchell, even though when you read it, he's like, what?
But there was, and when I've spoken to other people, lots of people have got similar stories about these strange sort of performances of authority in a workplace, especially when a lot of the workforce is quite young and not quite sure about what's normal etiquette in an office and what's not, and how much power do you have as an intern over what happens in those environments. So that thing I thought would be quite fun to explore, but also highlighting an issue, I hope.
Yeah, definitely, which I think definitely comes across, because I think that, you know, we laugh at the situations, we laugh at Mitchell, like, you know, he is ridiculous, but then also on another level where, you know, you think this is just not okay, like, I'm finding this funny, but this does really happen, and that's just unacceptable. But, you know, and this is, we know we need to change these boys club environments, as Cheryl's commented here.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think that Alyssa, I mean, at least in the story, Alyssa certainly does that. So that is brilliant to see. If you haven't finished it yet, people, then we're not going to give you a massive spoiler, but just keep going, and you'll see how she turns around the situation, which is great. So I've got another question here for you, Abby, which I'm going to bring up. Oh, that's such a lovely comment as well from Cheryl, that you described the imbalance of power perfectly. So that was really nice. Thanks, Cheryl.
It's amazing that you of hindsight does when you get clarity and hang on, that thing that I experienced a few years ago was actually really weird and not okay.
Exactly. But it's so good to then write about it and to, you know, put it out there, and then also say, you know, yes, that is based on real life experience, and that was, you know, that wasn't okay. And the more people that see that and think about it, then the better.
Definitely.
The next question is, the Lonely Fajita is uplifting and feel good, but at the same time, it also explores themes of loneliness and self-discovery. Is this what you intended? I mean, we kind of have touched on this a little bit as well, but
yeah, no, it definitely is, and I think how it was helpful in that I tried, when I first started writing the book, whether it was going to be a first person or a third person narrative, and I lent towards the first person, because one of the things that I wanted to explore is the idea of self-doubt, sort of a low-key ongoing anxiety that a lot of people feel, especially when you have lost the structure of sort of organized educational environment like university or school or whatever, and you've got to then strike out, and the first person lent itself much better to that, in that you go into meet new people or a new environment, and that constant ticking of, am I interpreting this in the right way, and second guessing your thoughts and choices, that I know a lot of people experience, that sort of social anxiety, what's right or wrong to do in certain situations. And so that's something that I wanted to explore, and in the self-discovery aspect of it. I mean, we all like to think that someone can pull through a situation that they're unhappy about by themselves, but it's so often dependent on others, the perspective of other people. So that's where I thought Annie and Alyssa could help each other in a lot of ways, and that they both need to come out of isolation in different respects. Annie's is more of a sort of a self-enforced one, and Alyssa's is more of a, I'm just completely lost and not sure which direction or which decision is going to make this better. And so where one lacks a quality, the other has it. And it's about sort of that self-discovery that comes through a support network. But sometimes that support network is one that you have to actively seek, as opposed to one that you just fall into.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really important thing for people to think about, because I think that sometimes, or we're often sort of told, oh, you need to, get better on your own, or like you're in charge of your own happiness, which of course you are, but it's also that you do need a support network around you to help you help you get there, and it can be so difficult otherwise.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, my next question for you now, Abby, is moving on to kind of the future, which is, can you tell us what you're working on now?
Yes, so I'm this is where I start going a little cold.
You're like, what's happening?
It's hard to explain. I suppose I've got to a stage now where I've got much more clarity on this. It's a second novel. It's another standalone. So this one is different in that the environment is very different, and the situation problem is very different from the Lonely Fajita. But it's still comedy. It's still got that path of self-discovery, but in a way that is perhaps a little more abrupt. So this novel focuses on a discovery that the main character makes about her family history. And that is through sort of the function of a home DNA testing kit, that the results of which are broadcast in a very, very public way. And so that's the basic premise of the book. I know that DNA testing kits and ancestry kits and things like that have become really, really popular. But when I was doing some research on it, there's some statistics, especially in the United States, where they've had the biggest uptake in the world in these home DNA testing kits, that about 4% of results that come through reveal an immediate family member who is either not the relative they thought that they were, or a completely new relative that they didn't know that they had. So it's quite a high proportion of people who discover something that they didn't have any clue about. And so much so they've got support networks in different states and countries for people who have discovered something like that. So I thought that was an interesting jumping off point about what's the fallout from finding out a piece of news like that. Who does it impact beyond the person themselves, and how does that change the way that you identify? Do you follow that path and find out more about it, or just try and park it? So that's the kind of thing that I wanted to explore with this novel.
So I'm guessing the character will explore it. So that will be the follow the story thread.
Yes,
that's great. I'm very excited. That's next year, I believe, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Next year.
Yeah. Keep an eye out, everyone. So my next question is more of a general discussion question. So everyone out there, please let us know your thoughts as well. So obviously there are so many memorable characters in The Lonely Fajita, which is one of the things I completely love about it. So for everyone, if you've read the book, who is your favorite character and why? Ooh. I don't know. Can you answer that yourself, Abby? Do you have a favorite character, or is that like choosing a favorite child and you can't do it?
I think a favorite character for me to write, definitely yes. I suppose my perspective is a little different. It was the character who was most fun to write. Two really, Suki, who is one of Alyssa's colleague, work friends. She's really fun to write just because she's really cool, and she has a lot of the qualities that I think if I cared less about the impact of my behaviours, I would perhaps want to emulate Suki a little bit, just to sort of that type of easy breezy cool person who seems to be just have interesting hobbies and seems to be constantly scheduled a social calendar. She was really fun to write because she's a little bit left of field, and she shapes up Alyssa's safe mode.
She definitely does, which is why I think she's such a good friend, or in that way, because she is just bringing getting Alyssa out of her comfort zone, which I love.
And Mitchell was really fun to write as well, who is her boss. just because it was, it's something, there's something quite I don't know, voyeuristic about sort of reading really horribly awkward situations.
Yeah.
And he seems to thrive on making a situation as awkward as possible, which is my worst nightmare. So there was almost something quite safe about writing that and not actually having to experience it. Although I
Yeah.
have in an indirect way when I was working.
Doing the opposite. That
Mm.
must be quite fun to then sort of do, be in that situation, or to create that, but then be like, I'm okay, it's all right.
Yeah. But I know then a lot of people have enjoyed reading Annie's character a lot, and I've had quite a few comments about her reminding them of their own nans or grandmas, which is really nice. And that was, I suppose, trying to capture that type of older person who is very, very sure of themselves, perhaps annoyingly stubborn, um, and little quirks and things that they do, and if reminding people, if that's it helps remind people of their own nans and grandmas, and that's a really nice thing that I didn't expect. I thought it was I was just drawing on my own sort of relatives and experience, but it seems to be a much more of a common sort of character trait than I perhaps thought, which is really nice.
Yeah, definitely. No, well, I was going to say that, well, I mean, obviously Alyssa and Annie, they were, two of my favorites, but I thought that would be a little bit obvious. So it was funny because I was going to say Suki and Mitchell as well, and that's what you've said too, because I just thought they were. So that obviously comes across. You enjoyed writing them both so much, and I enjoyed reading them so much. So, but I think that there's just so many fun characters. I was also like, oh, there's George, and there's and Margaret. They're so just like their dynamic. I just love all of the people like in Annie's community. They're so fun.
Yeah, I think George and Margaret as well as an older couple. I did a brief stint working in a Salvation Army cafe, where a lot of sort of older people would come in there for lunches and tea and cake and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there was a couple in there who, and the man was called George, but his wife would basically just talk for him constantly, and he didn't seem to have any sort of choice. He didn't get. She chose what he ate. She chose. He'd go to answer a question, and she'd answer it for him. But at the same time, they both seemed really happy with that setup. He was almost quite proud of the fact that sort of she was the boss. And he was spoke about her in a very sort of affectionate, endearing way, which I thought was quite sweet. So I wanted to include them as well.
Yeah, definitely, just showing different kinds of relationships as well. But they're just so fun. Cheryl says here, I thought Alyssa was quite relatable for many readers struggle when it comes to finding themselves, asserting themselves, and being independent. I think that's very true. Very good point. I think that's, I think that, we all definitely all relate to Alyssa. And I think that, she is ultimately the protagonist of the book, and we love her, but she has gone through, she does have to go through quite a lot to get to where she is at the end, doesn't she? She's in a very tricky place at the beginning.
And I think it's a lot of there's big choices that are very difficult to make, but I think a lot of the time, especially with people who struggle with being assertive, it's the seemingly small decisions that create the biggest internal conflict for somebody.
Yeah.
So for Alyssa, something as seemingly minor as being forthright in a meeting with a work colleague, or actually saying if she's unhappy about something rather than going along with it, or being the person who stays late after work because everyone else is clocked off. Those sorts of things take a huge amount of sort of internal confidence to execute, and I think that's what she learns over the course of the book, and really sort of comes into her own and knows herself a lot better as a result.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just so poignant as well, because I think that's something that, at some point, everyone always struggles with that sort of thing, trying to, figure out what you really want. Like, how do you say no to little situations that you really don't want to do? Sorting between, friends that you've had, I guess, for a long time, maybe aren't that good for you anymore. That's sort of, we all go through those little turmoils, but yeah. So it's great to see her go through that as well. I think that's what everyone relates to so much. So now my final question for us all, which is a classic that I always like to end these on, which is finally, what would you say about the book when pressing it into someone else's hands?
It's a hard question, but I think I suppose you never know when you write a book what the way that people, it's going to be different for everybody in the way that they view it. And I think a lot of people, and what I hope that it does is create a little bit of a brain holiday, I suppose, to call it that, or something like that, from everything that is going on. And there is a lot to do with community, about coming together and looking out for neighbours, whether that is somebody who physically lives close to you or who you are close with but not don't live near, and wanting to have the idea of it's something that you can laugh to, it's something that will raise a smile, and that to just not just take it as a few hours outside of this climate that we're currently in, and just taking some comfort in somebody else's story of community. And hopefully there are some messages in it that can seep into everybody's life afterwards in a way that is ultimately a positive experience.
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's just totally relatable right now in that sense, and it just will leave you with a smile at the end. And I think that's the main thing that we all need right now. So personally, Cheryl's left us another lovely little comment. Thank you, Cheryl, for all your comments today. If you want a good laugh but also a moment of escapism, then this is the perfect read. That was a good summary.
That's a good summary.
But yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that sums up the Lonely Fajita, doesn't it, really? Claire also says friends and a hug in book form. That's a very good point. Just right now, that's what we need, and that's what I was saying before, like all the characters are just so brilliant, and it's just so fun to hang out with them for a few hours.
Yeah, I like to think of it as a bit like eavesdropping on a really good, juicy conversation. That's what I'm hoping that offers. If we can't do that at the moment, we can't sit behind someone on a bus or someone's conversation in a cafe, then perhaps this is a bookish version of doing those activities that perhaps we didn't think about as being something that we would miss before lockdown happened.
Definitely. Oh, well, thank you so much, Abby, for joining us today. It was so much fun to chat. And good luck with the rest of book 2, because it sounds like it's very, very promising, and I'm very excited. But so everyone out there, Lonely Fajita only came out on Thursday, so please go and pick up your copy digitally. It's just so brilliant, and you will love it, and it'll leave you with a smile. But we'll say goodbye to Abby for now, and then I'll tell you about our next book club. So bye, Abby. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It was so much fun to discuss such a wonderful book. I really can't recommend it enough. It just left me with such a massive smile. So it definitely will do the same for you. So now I'm going to tell you about our next book club, we've got another one this week, which is great. So pencil it in your diaries. I will bring it up on the screen so you will see what it is. I'm going to be joined by Noelle Holton, author of the DC Maggie Jameson series, and we'll be discussing her latest thriller, Dead Wrong. So I'm confident that you'll definitely read through it over the next few days, as you won't be able to put it down. So that's on Thursday at 1 p.m. in the UK, 8 a.m. in Eastern Standard Time. So I hope to see you on Thursday, and I hope that you stay safe and well until then. Speak to you later. Bye.